if you want to implement something that requires authentication and login, you can start by looking in the user handler with the registering, how it works. So when I register a user, I check if it already exists with that username. And if it does, they're not allowed to register. So then I send back a status of 400 with a bad request that a user already exists. But if the user doesn't exist, I create a new user and I create a token for them, because when they register, they're logged in, as well as when they use the login endpoint. And then I send back the username and the token. So if you want to use something else like an API key or something, this will be the place to also implement it. And I'm using the create token in here so you can see how stuff works. I use the GWT module, JSON Web Token. So you can look into how that works. And I send back the token. And this is pretty much the basic stuff I do when I log in as well, but I don't create a new user, of course. So when I log in, I check if the user exists. And if it does, I verify the password. And then I send back the ID, the username. The API key doesn't exist, so I'll remove that. And the token. And so I create a new token for them when they log in. And if the password doesn't verify, it's a bad request, of course, and I send back a status saying it's a bad request. Or if the user doesn't exist, I send back that as well, of course. So let's say we want to test this out. So first off, we can look in the endpoints documentation. And under the register, I get the URL, and the expected input should be object containing username and password. Expected output should be containing username. This is wrong. It should contain username and token. So you can see it uses the user handler, and it's a register function on the handler. So I'm using Postman because I think it's pretty neat. So we can try and register this user called abc@abc.com and this password. And you have to set the content type to application.json in order to get it to work. So when we try to register on the v1 user/register, I get back the username and the token. So I get this really long random gibberish text string. So now we need to have some endpoint to test it with that requires authentication. So what I can do is I can go to my endpoints file and I can use the ping endpoint that I have to test stuff. So as you can see, it's just /ping and it's a get method. It doesn't have any middleware, which we want to have authentication middleware here. So we type middleware dot have. We want to use the if it have the valid token. So we can look in the middleware. There is a middleware called valid token, which we want to use. And as you can see, it has 3 ways of getting the token. You can put it in the body, or you can put it in a get variable, or you can put it in the headers. So I'm going to use this header here to put the token in. So, but first we want to use the valid token middleware. So in the endpoints, I type middleware dot valid token, and this is all you have to do in order to use that middleware. So for example, let's test it out in the browser. If I go to my ping endpoint, I shouldn't be able to get to it, which I do because I didn't save. Bad request, you have to provide a valid token. So this is working. And that message is coming from the middleware, of course. So now we want to test it because you shouldn't be able, for example, to get environmental. stuff from the environment file because that's sensitive data. So we want to just display that information if they're authenticated. So when we go to Postman, we can copy the token and you can use it in the query like this. Token equals and then paste it in there. Or you can use it in the body if it's a post. Or you can use it in the headers, which we're going to use. And the header that you have to specify, we can look in the middleware, is the x-axis token. So in here we type x-axis token, and then we paste it in the value which we copied from the response. So that's all we have to do in order to be authenticated. So let's try it out. It's a get, and it's to the ping endpoint. So it's /ping. So now we should be able to get the sensitive data, and we do. So you can see that the authentication is working, and we can verify this by removing the access token, and now we shouldn't be able to get any data, and we don't. We get a bad request. You must provide a valid token. So it's working, but you don't want to register a new user every time you want to check something that requires authentication. So we can also log in, and we can do this by using the v1-login endpoint, and it's a post, and you have to provide your user data, so the username and the password. So if I log in with this, it doesn't work because I think it's -user-login, which kind of makes sense. Yes, and I get my user ID back, which I might want to use in some applications in order to identify the user. And I get my username back, and I get my token. And this is another token, so it's not the same token. So I copy this, I put it in my header for the x-axis token, and I put the value in there. And now I should also be able to use the ping endpoint again with another token. And it's not a post, it's a get. And as you can see, it's working. And I suggest that you look into how the middleware is working. And if you want to use multiple middleware, this is an array, so you can just put in multiple here, middleware.valid ID, for example. And they run in the order that they're specified. So this will run first, and then this will run. So if the first one fails, the second one won't run. So that's how you can use authentication on your endpoint. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I see you in the next tutorial.